Jamie Fraser was known as a man of honor, steady as the mountains around him. He was the kind of man people trusted with their lives, their families, their secrets. His silence spoke louder than words, his patience stretched longer than most could imagine. But even mountains can crack under the weight of time and pressure. For years, Jamie carried not just his own struggles, but the struggles of those around him. He bore the loss of people he loved, the sting of betrayal from those he once trusted, and the endless fight to protect his land, his clan, and his name. Every day demanded more of him, and every night he hid the scars that no one else could see. He fought battles not only with swords but with his heart, battles against doubt, fear, and the constant pull of destiny. To the world he looked unbreakable, but inside storms were gathering. The kind of storms that don't just pass with the wind, the kind of storms that grow louder and darker until they demand to be heard. This was Jamie Fraser before the fire broke free. Calm, silent, almost too composed. And yet every calm sea hides the danger of a rising tide. His breaking point was coming. A moment that would shake not only his enemies but also his allies. A moment that would remind everyone that when Jamie lets loose, nothing and no one can stand in his way. Every man has a limit, though few dare to test it. For Jamie Fraser, the world had been testing him for too long. Every day brought another wound to his pride, another demand on his spirit. He watched his land threatened, his people divided, his family pulled into danger again and again. He stood still, strong on the outside, but each insult, each loss dug deeper into the cracks forming within him. There is a strange danger in silence. It looks like peace, but in truth it is often a mask for the storm hiding beneath. Jamie wore that mask well. His eyes carried the calm of a highland sky, but behind them, fire was building, waiting for the moment to break through. Friends thought his patience was endless. Enemies mistook his restraint for weakness. They didn't see that each controlled breath, each measured word, was sharpening the edge of a fury no one was ready to face. He bore betrayal in quiet. He endured humiliation without complaint. He accepted pain like it was part of his destiny. But patience can become a cage, and Jamie was trapped inside it. The bars of that cage grew tighter with every injustice, every cruel whisper, every act of violence against those he swore to protect. And when a cage tightens, there are only two choices: surrender or break free. Jamie Fraser was not a man who surrendered. He was a man who carried the blood of warriors in his veins, the memory of battles in his bones. His silence was ending. The tension was no longer invisible. It pulsed in the air like the beat of war drums just before the charge. And when those drums finally called, Jamie would not just fight, he would erupt. It happened suddenly, but also not at all. The truth is, Jamie's rage had been waiting, coiled tight inside him like a blade hidden in the dark. The day came when someone pushed too far. A single insult sharper than steel, a single betrayal that cut deeper than any wound of battle. That was the spark. And with it, the fire inside him roared free. There was no warning, no polite restraint left. His voice thundered not with words of reason, but with the raw power of a man who had endured too much for too long. It was not anger, it was release. The kind of release that shakes walls and silences crowds. Those who stood against him felt the weight of years unleashed in a single moment. And those who once thought him unshakable saw what it meant when the unshakable finally cracked. Jamie's fury was not wild chaos. It was sharp, precise, like lightning splitting the sky. Every step he took carried the force of all the battles he had fought, all the pain he had buried. His hands, steady for so long, now struck with a strength that seemed beyond human. His words cut deeper than his sword, each one tearing away the masks of liars, betrayers, and cowards. For those watching, it was terrifying. For those who knew him, it was heartbreaking. This was not the calm Highlander they trusted. This was a storm in human form. And yet, even in his fury, there was something righteous, something undeniable. He wasn't just lashing out, he was finally free from the chains that had bound him. When Jamie Fraser let loose, the world shifted. And nothing, not loyalty, not fear, not even love, could put the storm back inside him again. The man they thought they knew was gone. In his place stood something far more dangerous. Not a warrior, not a leader, but a force of nature. Jamie Fraser was no longer holding back. The fire inside him poured out, fierce and unstoppable, burning everything that dared to stand in his path. His enemies expected a man with limits. What they faced was a storm given flesh. Every strike carried the weight of years of silence, every shout echoed like thunder rolling across the hills. He moved with a fury that was not reckless but terrifyingly precise. His blade did not waver, his voice did not stumble. It was as if the storm itself had chosen Jamie as its weapon. And yet, in the middle of this chaos, there was clarity. This was not mindless rage. It was justice. It was the reckoning of a man who had been wronged too many times and finally refused to bow. His fury was not wild destruction, it was a message carved into the hearts of all who watched. Jamie Fraser will endure no more. Friends looked on in awe, torn between fear and admiration. Enemies faltered, their confidence shattered under the weight of his unleashed power. Even the land seemed to answer him. Wind rising, fire crackling, the earth trembling with each step he took. The storm was not just around him. The storm was him, and when Jamie let loose, there was no going back. The man who had once carried his burdens in silence was now the voice of thunder, the hand of fire, the storm that no chain, no law, no enemy could ever hold again. And then, silence. The kind of silence that makes the air feel heavier than sound ever could. The storm had passed, but its mark was everywhere, burned into the eyes of those who witnessed it, etched into the hearts of those who would never forget. Jamie Fraser stood at the center, breathing hard, his chest rising like the tide after a storm, his eyes still glowing with the fire that had just been unleashed. Around him, the world felt changed. Friends who had always trusted his calm now looked at him with something new. Respect, yes, but also fear. They had seen what lay beneath the surface, the truth that Jamie had hidden for so long. Enemies, those who had once laughed at his restraint, now trembled in silence. Their arrogance had turned to ash in the fire of his fury. None dared to speak. None dared to move. But perhaps the most striking change was in Jamie himself. He was not broken, but neither was he the same man who had stood silent for so long. His rage had cost him something. His calm was gone, replaced by a deeper weight. A new understanding that once a storm is released, it can never fully be caged again. The fire may dim, but its heat lingers, shaping everything it touches. The ground seemed quieter under his boots, the sky clearer, as though it too had been waiting for this moment. Jamie Fraser had let loose, and though the storm had ended, the echo of thunder remained in every corner, every shadow, every heart. Sometimes, it is not the storm itself that terrifies. It is the silence that follows, because in that silence, everyone knows the truth. Nothing will ever be the same again. The fire was gone, the silence heavy. Yet one truth clung to the air. Jamie Fraser was no longer just a man of patience and honor. He had shown the world the storm he carried, and once seen, it could never be unseen. The question that now haunted everyone was simple. What would come next? Would his fury protect all that he loved, driving back the enemies who circled like wolves? Or would that same fury turn against him, consuming everything he had fought so hard to build? The line between savior and destroyer had never been so thin, and Jamie stood balanced on it, one step away from greatness, one step away from ruin. History often remembers the calm before a storm. But Jamie Fraser's story was different. His was the tale of what happens when the storm itself walks among men, when silence gives way to thunder, when patience gives way to fire. For some, it was a warning. For others, it was hope. For all, it was unforgettable. And so the world would watch him closely. Friends would wonder if they could still trust him. Enemies would wonder how to ever stand against him. And Jamie himself would wonder what price the storm would demand next. Because storms do not leave without taking something. They carve, they shape, they scar. The storm had passed, but its shadow stretched long into the future. And deep inside, Jamie knew this was not the end of his fury. It was only the beginning. The last flicker of fire faded, but the echo of Jamie's fury lived on. It clung to the air like smoke after a battlefield, impossible to ignore, impossible to forget. People whispered his name differently now, not with casual respect, but with a weight that carried both awe and fear. Jamie Fraser had shown the truth, that even the strongest walls can break, and when they do, they bring the heavens down with them. But the storm he unleashed was not just for one night, one fight, one enemy. Storms spread. They ripple through valleys, across rivers, into the hearts of men and women who hear their roar. And Jamie's roar would travel far. Some would hear it as a promise of justice. Others would hear it as a warning of destruction. But all would remember it. He stood there, not as the same man who once bore his burdens in silence, but as something else. A figure reshaped by fire, sharpened by fury, unchained from patience. The question lingered in the silence like a blade left hanging in the air. What would he do now? Would he forge peace with this new fire inside him? Or burn everything that dared to stand in his way? The Highlands knew storms. They had seen skies split by thunder and earth shaken by winds. But this storm was different. It did not belong to nature. It belonged to Jamie Fraser. And storms like that do not fade quietly. They wait, they grow, and when the world least expects it, they strike again. The storm had walked once. It would walk again. And when it did, nothing would be safe.